when I was doing my BA, the country has already gone through the revolution, and I was kind of, I have been involved with a lot of organizations in Tunisia, and I've been trying to understand really what is social impact, what are social sciences, what can activists do, and I really found myself in the world of activism at the beginning.
Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Politically with Basu. This is like a part of a series of life in social sciences that I've been running for quite some time, where I talk to people who have explored various interesting career trajectories after entering the field of social sciences. Today, we have a guest who has been very kind in sharing her time with us today to talk to us about her own unique journey in social entrepreneurship of sorts. Balkis, she has pursued her master's in international affairs from the Lebanese American University. She has been a peace and security intern in the United Nations System Staff College and currently a part of the McKinsey's Forward program participant as well. One of the most brilliant aspect of her profile that I found was that she is the CEO and founder of an organization called the Leading Impact Institute. Balkis, to today's podcast, I thank you so much for your time. Uh, really appreciate that even after suffering from COVID, you have given us time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, so the first question that I usually ask everyone while starting this podcast is that why did you choose this field of study, like social sciences or international affairs? What was it, like a pre-planned decision of sorts, or you stumbled upon it?
Yeah, so actually it's quite a funny story. It was not something I wanted to do at the beginning. My BA is in English. I did a triple major in linguistics, literature, and civilization. And when I was doing my BA, the country has already gone through the revolution, and I was kind of, I have been involved with a lot of organizations in Tunisia, and I've been trying to understand really what is social impact, what are social sciences, what can activists do, and I really found myself in the world of activism at the beginning. It also happened that in the same time I'm doing my BA, I got selected in a scholarship by the US State Department to study in the US for a year. Um, so I went there and I did both English and international affairs. And this is when I was introduced to the world of, social sciences, mainly political science and international affairs. And I found out that my interests really they align a lot with what I was studying in the US. So I finished my BA. I got my degree in English, and then I really wanted to still, before doing a master's, I wanted to work a bit, discover the field, and see where do I fit most. And so I took about a 2-year break before actually doing my master's, and I volunteered a lot with different organizations all around the world, trying to see where I fit most. And like I said, I was really comfortable. I mean, I did a lot of things, honestly, from even if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I've done a lot from journalism to, being editor in chief, to working as program manager for a lot of youth organizations, but everything really fell under the youth engagement, youth empowerment, YPS sort of thing. And then after that, I decided that I do want to do my master's in international affairs, so I applied to a couple of universities around the world as well. And coming from the region, as I am originally from Tunisia, I did have an interest in the Middle East and North Africa. And so I applied to the universities in the US, and I also applied to the Lebanese American University here in Lebanon, where I am based right now. And I got selected in the MEPI scholarship. And that's when, it really felt like the right step in the right timing for me to continue doing my master's. And now I'm in my second year, actually going to finish my thesis this year and hopefully graduate. So yeah, so it was a bit of a roller coaster in there, but I'm happy I ended up where I am today. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. As you were saying that you had a very diverse kind of a choices also, like from journalism to activism of sorts. And when you were navigating through these different options after like pursuing social science of sorts, but like from a linguistic studies background, was it difficult to tap into these roles initially, or
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I'm not going to lie and say it was easy,
mm,
because obviously, what happened with me was that I dived directly into practice and I didn't have a lot of, academic background. So I did a lot of studying myself. But once, honestly, you get used to the field itself, it gets a bit easier. And this is what I like about social sciences. Yes, in academia matters, and yes, going to a university and sitting in the class and actually having that discussion with people around you who are also have diverse backgrounds and with the professor definitely helps. But practice is also really needed. And I've always been a huge advocate of the importance of trying to make that balance between theory and practice, because most of the time when you go to the field, things can be a bit different. And so it wasn't that difficult at the end, but at the beginning, as everything, there were a few obstacles that I had to navigate. Thankfully, I had the network, I had, especially through LinkedIn, I connected with a lot of people whom I asked help from. And I tried to find, a good balance for myself where I can dive into a new role, but also have the qualifications that I need to succeed in that role. So it wasn't really like, I wasn't really applying to everything that I could find. It wasn't like that. I had a certain plan in my head, and I
okay.
also wanted to deliver good quality work. So, it was a bit random, I would say, but in the back of my head, I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew where I wanted to be at the end of at the end of the day. And so that's also very important. But yeah, it wasn't super easy. But like I said, when you have a good plan, when you have a good network, you can definitely navigate the challenges.
Right. So I also saw that you were a United Nations volunteer also, and had an internship, I think. So when you apply, like even in India, like my students also who are aspiring to become like interns, because it's a great deal to become an intern in United Nations, because that's a different level of CV booster that we call. So when we are applying, like also the process is also very long of sorts. It is not really like a general internship anywhere else. So, do you think that because you had navigated like so many different roles earlier, your profile had an upper edge, or do you think that someone who is fresh out of college can also get into these positions as an intern in United Nations?
Yeah, so I think having several positions before definitely helped. The thing with the internship in the United Nations system, what I noticed, they're very demanding, and they're very demanding in a good way. So you actually learn. And so when they select an intern, they want someone whom they know can deliver the work and deliver good quality work. So I remember at the end of my internship, this was actually something I asked my supervisor. I told her, I would like to know, why did you choose me? Because I know they received a lot of applications. And one of the things she told me was that my CV really stood out because I had a lot of experience. Um, and so that does help. But I also want to highlight that you can also apply fresh out of college, not having a lot of experience. It really depends on how you frame your internship. What are the skills that you have? How do you present yourself? How do you sell your story? And how do you really fit, into the profile they're looking for? And this is also, again, why I said I'm a big advocate of practice. Even if you are in a university trying to get a degree, you don't have necessarily to, be involved with different organizations like I did, but at least, do something that has to do with even university clubs, or starting
Right.
your own club at university, right? Interacting with people. It's not really all about academia. Like I said, there should be a good balance between both. I'm not saying don't get a degree. You do need it, but
Right.
also try to put it into practice.
Right. So, how did you like start this own organization of yours?
Yeah, so this happened last year around the period I was applying for no, actually 2 years ago. Wow, time flies. Around the period I was applying for my master's. I wanted So by that time, by 20, I think 2021, yeah, I came back from an internship I was doing with the World Youth Alliance and the UN in New York. And I was honestly, by that time, I've had a lot of positions and I've worked with so many youth all around the world and so many organizations. And I got to a point where I had enough experience to really try to assess and understand what was wrong with every organization's work and what can be fixed. And I was growing very frustrated. With the fact that there wasn't a lot of emphasis on youth in the region, and even if there was, it was being done the wrong way. So there wasn't, like, for example, accessibility wasn't there, language wasn't there, so everything was in English, and it's mostly an Arabic
Right.
speaking region. Many things were wrong, and I was really growing so frustrated with it. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to trust to start something that I believe can be successful. Now it can work and it might not work, which is fine, but I really wanted to get the mission out there. And being, like I said, working with youth and YPS and international development, social sciences, all of it, because really it falls into the same umbrella at the end of the day. I have I've really wanted to contribute more to the field, because I remember when I said, okay, I'm doing something, but what can be done to help the region advance, right? And so there are so many problems. Like, we really cannot solve all of them. But I tried to get to the gist of it. What is the one thing that needs to be highlighted? And for me, that was youth. Um, so I wanted to include youth in the decision making, and I wanted youth to understand more what is happening. Why do we have so many organizations, let's say in Tunisia, working on governance and freedom, right, and social change? Why is it not working on something else? And when they recruit youth, do those youth who apply, do they really understand what they are applying for, right? Do they really understand the context? I felt like there is a lot of potential, but they didn't really understand most of it. And this is what really started the idea. I wanted it at the beginning to be mostly for capacity building. And I remember, like I said, because I've also wanted that balance between theory and practice, I wanted to start something that would produce research, but will also put it into practice. And this is why I call it a think and do tank. So
Yeah,
it's not only a
I
think tank,
noticed that.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a think and do tank. We're not only going to, to conduct research, we're going to test it and see whether it really works and see what you think about it. So I wanted it to be more interactive. And I also wanted to publish, learning resources, deliver trainings, mostly educational programs, that were around social impact, education, international development, leadership, youth, peace, and security, things that I felt are very needed. So I started it that way. I'm still trying to register it in Lebanon, because obviously I had to move right after I started it. And I recruited a few in the team to help you with it. And I tried to also make the team as international as possible. And I wanted this think tank, because usually when you look at think tanks, they're led by quite experienced experts, right? They
Yeah.
have a lot of experience. They're probably in their 40s. And I remember when I said it's the think and do tank led by youth, I got a lot of people telling me, but what do youth know, right? They're still
Yeah.
young. They don't have experience. And this is when I said, we're not excluding, everyone else. Obviously, we need those. We need their recommendations. We need their help. Their expertise, but the essence that youth are going to be sitting at the table, right? We're not going to have 15 people who are 40 and above decide what is best for us. So I wanted to have a youth perspective in there. Funny enough, though, when I came to Lebanon, being in the region, being in the Middle East, because I've never been, completely showed me that really showed me that I need to completely change a lot of things that I thought would work with youth in this region, because honestly, living here really gives you that first-hand experience. It's very different from living outside the region and thinking you really understand what's going on. So coming here, not only did it show me that we need youth to be at the core of the decision making, but it really showed me that a lot of things that I took for granted, like having internet connection, having a laptop, that accessibility problem, that is not something that can be accessible here, right? Especially with Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, all of them having, maybe not Jordan, but most of the other countries having a lot of crises, like in Lebanon, for example, what is going on now, and not having electricity, and youth having to go to coffee places and cafes to find somewhere to work. I remember the first semester I literally laughed at myself because I thought delivering online educational programs would be easy, and I came here. I noticed it's not, right, because many of them will suffer from internet connection or will suffer from electricity problems. So that gave me another layer that I felt like we
Yeah.
need to address, and right, and that's when I decided to take some time and try to work more on the idea and development more, and hopefully in about 2 to 3 months we'll be launching our first program. But yeah, it's really, I'm grateful for being here, honestly, because it showed me that even though I thought I know, and even though I am from the region, it's so much different when you come to the Middle East itself and see what youth are going through. uh, sorry. Yeah. So that's when, that's the good thing about traveling and about studying abroad, right? And about being in the context itself. It really gives you a whole different perspective. And even for someone who thinks, they know, who speaks the language, knows the culture, really, the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know a lot.
Yeah, it's very fascinating to hear about this. Like I can talk about our country and the kind of education system that has been prevalent in India of sorts. That most of our schools of international studies, unfortunately, because of funding opportunities as well, that we have experts in area studies of sorts of the MENA region. But due to lack of funding, those experts cannot really go to these fields, so they become these theoretical experts of sorts, so who have never even been to these lands. And it becomes very ironical that you are maybe a expert in a particular area which you have never visited. So and there are I cannot name them obviously, but I can just visualize their names coming in front of me. So what kind of research ideas are you currently working on with respect to this organization? Like you said that you are
Yeah.
interested in publications with this organization as well. So what kind of research areas that you are currently looking at?
Yeah, so I wanted actually to link it to what I'm doing for my thesis, and I'm going to work on youth peace and security. And I wanted the research really to be about the agenda itself. At least for now, this is what we're focusing on. The agenda itself and the challenges of its implementation here in the region, right? What are the things that are lacking? How are the governments looking at it? What can the UN do to help? So we're focused on a lot on YPS because, at least from my own research, it's a very ambitious agenda, and the resolution itself can do a lot and can help a lot of countries, but the implementation has been really a big challenge. So there is potential to it, and it's really historic when it was implemented in 2015. And I don't want us to lose that momentum, so I want really to hold on to it and see what can we do to advance it, especially now, in with everything that's been going on in the region with these crises, especially after COVID. The whole world shifting, a lot of economies really with all the inflation are getting worse. I feel like now is the time we need to still bring it up to the surface, because if we don't, it will be forgotten. And there will be focus on other things that are still as urgent, but at the end of the day, we'll see that the whole WAPIS agenda and the resolution itself, the three resolutions have been put aside, and we don't want that to happen. It really took a lot of effort to bring it to the surface and to have a Security Council talk about it. So that's a lot of work that we don't want to lose, and a lot of effort we don't want to lose. So we're focusing a lot on that, mainly in the region. I have some interest also in Sudan because I worked on it with my internship with UN. And basically countries really that are suffering from conflict or have been going through a lot of post-war fragility, and economies that haven't been built in a way that would help the country progress. So yeah, this is the sort of thing we're looking at right now.
Right. Like personally, I also work on conflict, but I work on the South Asian side. So what I have faced, like in my doctoral thesis as well, I have not yet, like I'm still planning on going to the field. We have done a pilot survey of sorts, but what I feel is that usually with respect to using methods like ethnographic method, like that is the usual thing with respect to peace and conflict studies. Accessing these spaces becomes very difficult of sorts because maybe they are militarized, or post conflict spaces are difficult to access because of the restrictions. So because you have such a wide experience, like how do you tap into these spaces?
Honestly, my approach has been to contact experts who've been doing a lot of work on this and get their advice. They've also recommended a few things to do here and there, maybe a few websites to look at. But my approach really has been to talk to those who've been trying to implement the agenda itself. One of the challenges I faced personally is actually the lack of material in Arabic. That's one thing. So you either find it a lot in English, but it's not as I would say it's not as well researched. Like there isn't too much about it. There would be more about, countries that are more in the radar. And also there isn't material in Arabic. This is something, even when in my internship with the UN, something that lacked a lot is the accessibility to material in Arabic. Most of it was in English. Maybe a bit, I would say French would be the second language where you'll find a lot of material. But in Arabic, it was definitely something that we've been trying, to look more into. And the thing is, you can't really translate everything. It takes a lot of time. And also takes a lot of effort. And obviously, everyone is a volunteer at this point. So so my approach has been to try to find resources in Arabic, but also approach people who've been doing this kind of research before in the region. I do admit that I stalked a lot on LinkedIn and I sent a lot of invitations, but honestly many of them responded and many of them were helpful enough. So yeah, hopefully that continues.
Right. So, with respect to like a lot of students at this stage, they like someone who is just finishing their bachelor's, and they are interested in like specialized areas like peace and conflict, or women studies, or gender of sorts. So, or human rights, international law, things like that. So, at this stage, do you suggest that just right after finishing your bachelor's, do you need these kind of roles like volunteer roles, or interning in these spaces, or United Nations of sorts, before entering into a graduate program? Like, do you feel that it is required?
See, this is where this for me, was a major conversation I've had with a lot of friends because what happened was that when I went to the US and I studied in the US and then I applied to master's programs in the US, I remember I noticed that the average age for someone to get into a master's program would be 29, 30. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that's quite old, right? Because in my country, in the region, in my culture, at least in North Africa, you have to do a master's right after your bachelor's. If you don't, people ask what is wrong with them, right? Something going on. Like it's not for us, it doesn't make sense for you not to pursue another degree after you finish your bachelor's. And I remember I went to my parents and I told them, look, I tried to prepare them emotionally for telling them that I'm not going to do a master's. And I said, look, I want to discover the field more to know what kind of master's I want to do, because I'm not going to waste 2 years of my life on something that I wouldn't necessarily enjoy and I wouldn't want to work in at the end. And thankfully, my parents were understanding and they knew I won't be wasting time. But for a lot of outsiders, this didn't make sense, right? Why is she not doing a master? So I really think it depends on the country, the culture, what is it like there. But from my experience, I recommend 1,000% that you take some time off, do sort of volunteering, even try to get a job. Try to discover the field that you want to get into and then do your master's. And also from experience, I can tell you, and it's funny because now I'm noticing it when I'm taking classes. I'm currently 25, right? And everyone with me taking the classes about 21, 22. Because I'm taking classes in the field that I've been working in before, I have so much more knowledge and so much more experience than everyone around me. And so even in the sort of questions I ask, I notice that my questions are honestly advanced compared to the rest because they're fresh graduates, right? Let's say we're taking a class on international development and we're talking about what let's say problems that are happening with MENA and how or certain organizations or known international organizations are trying to fix it. And so to them, they're just trying to understand how it is working, right? When it comes to me, I know it is like because I've worked there, right? And I know what are the gaps. So I ask about the gaps. I ask about how can they be fixed? What can we add to it? And so I really honestly noticed the difference, especially when I took the class. So that experience, not only did it help me, um, learn more about the class itself and take a lot from the professor and ask them for more input. But it also helped me even in my own research, right? Even in my own, even in the assignments that I need to do, I really noticed that having that background and having that experience helped me see the classes with a very, very different lens than everyone else. And I have a few people also with me in the class who have experience, who've worked before, and I can tell that we are on the same page, right? The questions we ask, um, they clearly come from a practitioner. They come from someone who's worked before. So yes, I definitely recommend it, not only for this, but even for you to understand what is it like, right? Because do you really want to do conflict resolution? Do you want to do humanitarian aid? What is it? Is it peace and security? There are major differences in between those. And if you don't try it, you might never understand whether you might never know whether you like it or not. And even for me, I remember there have been places I volunteered with where I enjoyed the work, but I remember telling myself, this is not something I want to do. Although it is in the field, but I will never, ever want to tap into it. I would never, want to have, because imagine you apply for a lot of positions, you go through interviews, you get the position, it's a 3-year contract, right? You might even change countries and then you find out that you don't like it. So
Right.
I'm really, really grateful, yeah, that I had the chance to do that. It truly helped me clarify the idea and help me know what are the things I want to do and what are the things I never want to get into. And then when you apply to master's programs, you'll have the knowledge, you'll have the experiences, you'll have the contacts to write your recommendation letters, and you can actually get into quite good programs, right? Because you have that experience that they're looking for. So yes, I definitely recommend it, even if you are maybe in an environment or in a country, even family stress, honesty, and pressure that will not let you take that gap year, or maybe 2 or 3, really depends on you. Try to volunteer while you're doing your bachelor's or at the end of the year or even in summer, but try to understand what you want to do before diving into a master's, because graduate studies are, and you know that, right? Graduate studies are quite specific, and really you're going to focus on one area. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
No, this is very interesting because I was imagining my cultural background of sorts that here by 29 you should have a PhD. So
Yeah.
that's the deadline that we have. So it's very interesting, and this is something that even in India of sorts things are changing, because earlier, right after bachelor's, even the opportunities used to be very rare. So that used to be a push factor for a lot of people to just get into a graduate program and just stay calm for a few years. But right now, because there are larger opportunities in the market, that people are actually becoming that, let's think about what kind of programs we should be targeting. Um, it's very interesting, and I was just thinking about how really the cultural aspect uh, plays a huge role with respect to whether you should be doing certain kind of works before the graduate entering a graduate program, because this is something that I witnessed even with my batchmates and my colleagues also have left the fields they were pursuing even after a master's degree, because after spending such a long time they have realized that this is not their zone. And it's not like it's everything is done for them, but it is true that you lose significant amount of time. That's something that should be considered. So this is the last question that we have, and
Mhm.
we'll this that with respect to your political background that you have in your own country that you are growing up in, how did it navigate your, because I think it also plays a huge role. Uh, it has a socialization process, obviously. So how did it navigate your thinking, that you do you think it has a huge role in your choices that you are taking with respect to your career as well, and how did it navigate it?
Yeah, I have been lucky enough to honestly have grown in a dictatorship and then witnessed the revolution and then saw the transition process, right? So I've been there through it all. And honestly, for me, we didn't have a lot of options. Even when I decided, to do a degree in English, it's because it's something I enjoyed and I still do. And until today, I do enjoy writing and literature, right? But growing up in that context, and especially after the revolution, where honestly so many organizations were founded quickly within a year or two, that helped me access a field that I haven't heard before about, right? And so, yes, it did definitely allow me to, understand what is activism, right? What is youth participation? And it came at a time where I am going, I'm, a few years before I start university. So yes, that definitely did play a role. And I would say I'm lucky enough to have witnessed that. But I also grew up, even in a household where we discuss politics all the time, where, we were vocal about what is going on. So my upbringing also brought much to it. And I would say, again, it's not up until I came to this region that I really understood the severity of it. Sorry, post-COVID. And it really helped me, understand how much this work is needed. So it was a bit here and there, right? Witnessing the revolution, becoming involved a lot after it. And then my parents also encouraging me to pursue this career, coming here, going to the US, volunteering even remotely. All this really built into it. So this is why I always say, this sort of career paths and what you want to do in the future, it really is such an individual process, right? It cannot be one size fit all. Each person goes through it differently, and it really depends on your own effort and how you navigate it. Yes, you can reach out for advice, and yes, I mean you should, right? And you should have a network, but at the end of the day, it depends on you and what you want to do, your circumstances, where you live, a lot of things like that. So yeah, so I always say I'm lucky to have witnessed that in Tunisia, and have witnessed the transition. I think it has helped a lot, and coming here also added to the background, and added to what I want to do, and gave me more insight and gave me different perspective. And I really hope, honestly, even if someone lives in a perfect country, I mean, no country is perfect, but if someone, has a democracy and they feel like their country is good enough, and they want still to work in the field, I definitely recommend contacting those who've been through a lot of transitions to really understand what it is like, which again takes me back to the point of practice and theory, right? You need to understand what it is like on the background and have the theoretical background at the same time. So you need to understand the theory, but also be on the field and learn really what is it like and what are the gaps and what is missing. So yeah, this is why it's always important, because here it's so funny. You always have the debate between practitioners and those in academia or researchers, and it really shouldn't be a debate, right? Because both complete each other. And yeah, so it's been interesting to go through it all.
So it becomes it political climate also shapes you in that way. So thank you so much for taking out time, and this has been great. Like it was a learning process for me, and I'm sure that the viewers that we have will really reflect on these questions and can implement in whatever way possible. And thank you so much for taking out time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was helpful.